studied the whole model of grace parenting, it just offered me an opportunity just to inquire a little bit more. And I know there's very much more to learn and understand about it. But as I began to just think about parenting as a whole and where we are in looking at society today, the Lord began to just drop some things in my spirit after reading an article on it. And I'll share this with you. It says, we're in a time when the regard for what we learned and experienced with success or standards of acceptance or behaviors that dignified our morals, character, or integrity, or just good common sense seem to have been put on pause or even deleted. It has been pushed to the back burner, de-emphasized, or measured on a smaller scale. And I'm not speaking about a change for the good and growth of prosperity, but resistance and rebellion because of the lack of teaching and the lack of training and the lack of modeling through the eyes of what Christ has told us to do as parents. Now, I've been around long enough to know what the world pushes as parenting and also what God has called us to do and commanded us to do as it relates to parenting, regardless of our race, regardless of our economic status, whether you live or don't live in a gated community. It doesn't matter about your children's intellectual abilities. It doesn't even matter about some of the emotional or their physical stance. God has called us to a place where we have to parent based on the lead that He has implemented through the Word of God. There are some precepts and examples that we must recognize and employ to align our family using the grace model. Now, Dr. Tim Kimball, who I read, was basically the overseer in implementing that. He recognized that the grace model centers around this thought, that we have to treat our children the way in which God has treated us.
Yes, yes, yes.
That we have got to treat our children the way in which God has treated us. Now that would be based on the knowledge and our study of God. And there are two words that he indicated that really stood out for me. One is that of fear, because we operate in the spirit of fear. Our lack of knowledge, trying to keep up with everybody else, insecure, low self-esteem, some of the behaviors that we experience in our early years. And then the other one is not having a relationship, one with God, one with our families, and then with our children. How that looks will be based on where we are. And it isn't anything that we have to feel shame of. All it's doing now is saying that the Lord is calling us up to a higher elevation. Whatever we are doing now, He's saying that it could be done a little bit better. So you can't rush the seasons. And that's one of the things we've got to understand. We want our children to be that of the masses. We all have our own stage and developmental growth, just as our children.
Amen.
And we have to allow that process to take place in each of our children.
Yeah.
Just as the farmer can't rush the harvest,
Amen.
we can't do it with our children.
Amen.
Because she walked at 8 months, it doesn't mean that she may not walk till she's 18 months. But does it mean there's something wrong? No. It means that she's blooming in the way in which God established her being. So I'm going to close this segment by saying we must be assured in what God has commanded us to do and not allow the ways of our culture to dictate otherwise.
Yes.
God purposed our order for a reason. Say, for a reason.
For a reason.
Our children are relying on our wisdom of Christ to intercede on their behalf.
Amen.
And so I want you to repeat after me as we move to the next person. And this is an individual thing. Say, I am braver than I believe.
I am braver than I believe.
I am stronger than it seems.
I am stronger than it seems.
I am smarter than you think.
I am smarter than you think.
And I'm loved more than you know.
And I'm loved more than you know.
God bless you.
Amen.
I guess I'll go next. The word grace has multiple meanings. And one of the meanings is derived from the Greek word charis. And charis means the what's the word I'm looking for? Unmerited but undeserved kindness of God. So when I think of grace parenting, I think of, like she said, the way God has been kind to me, the way God has shown love to me in spite of who I am, in spite of the mistakes that I've made, in spite of how many times I've had to fall and get back up and fall and get back up and fall again. That God's hand was always extended to me, and He always showered me with His love. So it makes me think of my children that in spite of the personality differences or the things that I may not agree with when it comes to them, I have to consistently, on a consistent basis, practice that extension of undeserved love. The difference is I'm human. And sometimes extending that love burns my flesh. So it's important to keep practicing and practicing and practicing until it becomes a part of second nature. The thing about it is, I had a chance to experience both sides. I had a chance to experience parenting with a hard hand and by force parenting by grace. A lot of you already know that my children were taken from me a while ago. I don't know if y'all remember that. DCF took my children from me because I raised them with a hard hand. Everything was discipline. Everything was the belt, the shoe, the curtain rod, the plumber stick, whatever I could put my hand on. That's what I used, and I received consequence behind that. Not only were they taken from me, but I realized the damage that I caused them as individuals. Because at that time, I didn't see them as individuals. I just saw them as children. You're going to do what I say, when I say it, how I say it. And if you don't, I'm going to knock you across your head. And it's just that simple. I didn't realize that I was stifling them. I was stifling their individuality. I was stifling their gifts. I was stifling their voice. But I also realized that I was only practicing what was done to me.
Yes, yes.
And I used to always be the one to say, I will never treat my children the way my mama treated me. But in the end, I am doing the same exact thing. So, because my children were taken from me, I had to, by force, learn how to parent with grace. But in that process, it taught me to listen to my children, to have open dialogue with my children. And I learned a lot about myself in that process. I learned a lot about them. I I realized I didn't even know who they were.
Wow.
That I had these kids all this time,